welcome back to Uncorked, the Welsh Wine Podcast. And we're going to be focusing on the north.
The north, or Gogledd, as we'd say in Welsh.
So what we're going to cover today is basically how can we make wine up north.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will probably say it's too cold, it's too far north,
yeah,
etc., etc. So we're going to explore that. We're going to shine a spotlight on one particular vineyard in Conwy. And then we're going to do a bit of a comparison and look at other vineyards in the same area of North Wales.
Yeah.
Then we'll probably run to a bit of history, Angela. I think you've got something for us, yeah?
I do.
Fantastic.
Loosely related to wine.
Excellent. I can't
Tenuous.
There's wine. There is wine.
That's good to hear. Right. And speaking of wine, what are we drinking, Sarah?
We are drinking a Gwinllan Conwy Pinot Noir Rosé. We've not done a rosé yet. And
Gwynllan is Welsh for
vineyard.
Cool.
So Gwinllan Conwy Vineyard. You'll see that on a lot of the vineyard names. It'll start with Gwynllan and end with vineyard. So yeah, we've not had a Pinot Noir yet, so I thought that would be really interesting. All the way from Conwy, obviously. That I was literally there last week.
Why were you there? What were you doing there?
Well,
that wasn't. I'm not the police.
what were you doing there?
Who were you with? What were you doing? Why wasn't I invited?
I went to visit them specifically for this podcast, as you very well know, and I needed to pick up some bottles as well, not just this one that we're drinking today. But I needed some stock for the shop.
Yeah, so you went and collected the stock from North Wales?
Yeah, drove up there.
All the way up there for
bit of a commute.
couple of cases.
Even by my standards as a Canadian, that's a commute.
Yeah, that's a long way.
I mean, so my mum lives in Anglesey, and every time we go and visit, or every time she comes down, I try and arrange some sort of a stock drop-off. So either we drive up and we pick some up at the vineyard, or my mum will pick some up, or they'll drop some off to my mum, and she drives them down.
So it's quite common that you do a run, go to the vineyard, take the husband.
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't really think about it, but I work directly with Welsh vineyards, and most of the time they don't work with big suppliers or distributors. So either they come to me, which is usually it's obviously very nice, or we go to them, or we arrange some sort of a clandestine drop off. I mean, what happens a lot, to be fair, because I do have a license now. But I didn't for the longest time, and I would basically just put my partner Steve up for just use him, be like, yeah, of course Steve will be happy to drive an hour and a half to come and collect stock. And this one time I really, really needed wines from a specific vineyard. It was for a big order, and it was going down to London, really good for me, really good for the Welsh wine industry. And so I pawned Steve out again and said that he would meet. They met halfway, basically, in an Asda car park. And so while he was there, there's another nearby vineyard, and they normally come to me, and I was like, well, to save you the journey, why don't you meet Steve at this Asda car park? So he drove to this Asda car park, and he said that both vineyards, so the two cars were already there, parked up with just one bay in between them, and he just parked up, just kind of pulled up in between them. Apparently they didn't even speak to each other the entire time. It was already when he just opened the boot and everyone just silently put cases in the back.
Sunglasses?
I don't know. But he said it seemed so dodgy that he was like, what if CCTV picks up this transaction and thinks it's something else? It looked like some sort of drug mule.
Oh, that's the most middle-class drug deal there is,
really
isn't it?
weird. So
in an Asda car park.
He went into the supermarket just to get a bottle of Coke or something, just so that it was on camera that he used their facilities.
Which is exactly what a drug dealer would do. No heat here.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, so well done, Steve.
No, Steve.
You'd be stuck without him.
Steve the mule.
Steve the middle-class wine mule.
All right, so before we get into it, I've got another trivia question for you, because I know how much you love it.
Here we go.
Are you ready? Yep. Okay, how many registered vineyards are there in North Wales at the moment? Currently at this time.
Mm-hmm. Right, so I think I remember you saying there were around 50 or a bit more than 50 or 50 and growing vineyards in Wales as a whole.
Correct.
And I'm guessing, I was going to say, because the north is less populous than the south, so maybe that would indicate this, but that means there's more space for vineyards in the north. So my logic is
I like the workings.
A lot of thought going into
Yeah.
that.
a lot of thought.
You really want to be right, don't you?
Not a lot of substance,
You
though.
want to beat Jamie.
I mean, I'm probably still just going to grab a number out of the air, but I want there to be some thinking behind it. So I'm going to say 15.
15. Okay.
1-5.
Well, maybe we'll dispel this myth, but I think it's a bit cold and it's a bit windy.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite high up. I suppose that's probably a good thing. So I'll go 5.
5. Okay, so there's 10 vineyards difference there. All right, well, we will look into this a little bit later on. So diving into the north, obviously, how we can make wines up north. Lan and a Gogledd. There are lots of microclimates. When we talk about the north, it's such a generalized, huge area. It's vast. So we're including Anglesey here. We're including all of the northern counties. So there's obviously going to be a lot of differences.
So that's Gwynedd, Conwy, Denbighshire, Flintshire, that kind of area.
Your geography is better than mine. Yes, no, it is. Yeah, exactly. I was in Conwy just last week, and I was talking to Colin, who is one of the owners, and I'm going to go into more detail about that. But he actually really helped me understand a lot more about the specific climate in North Wales. So there's something called the phone effect. Have you ever heard of this?
Phone, like a telephone,
As in Foehn.
oh, like Cohen, but phone,
Sure.
like Leonard Phone,
Like phone.
like phone.
Now this
We'll
is
go with that.
this is very specific to the region that his vineyard is in Llandudno. Basically, it is when wet and cold conditions from one side of a mountain become warm and drier on the other side. That's the kind of the simplified
Okay.
version. I've looked at many a diagram, but because the Irish Sea is to the north, then they have this effect. So actually just being on the other side of the mountain,
Right.
they're actually warmer and drier than you'd think. So when you think of North Wales, everyone's assuming that it's going to be the colder and the wetter side, whereas actually there are lots and lots of spaces that are much warmer and drier, which I thought was really, really interesting.
So is that because they're on the south, basically the south side of the mountain or the south side of a slope, so they get the sun exposure? Or is it just because they're sheltered?
There's that as well, but because they're on the other side of the mountain, we're against the way that the wind blows.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Sheltered, basically.
Yeah, they are very much sheltered, and it's because of this effect they are warmer and drier. They also have water on 3 sides, at least 2 sides in North Wales, but some like Conwy, they have water on 3 sides. Now, water is actually a really interesting thing for vineyards because it provides a warming effect for quite a lot of different reasons. So if you think about the reflection of sunlight and heat, that is a really good way of kind of keeping the vineyard a little bit warmer. It also moderates the temperature on the vineyard because as the ocean stores heat, it prevents huge drops in temperature. So again, you think about North Wales, you just assume it's going to be really cold and wet all the time. Actually, it's kind of the opposite in certain spots. You also want to plant on south-facing slopes, so you get the sunshine, like you were just saying. And there's something called, right, Colin kept mentioning something called the Geneva curtain.
The what?
And how many times did he mention it, and how many times did you pretend you knew what he was talking about?
I nodded and smiled, and after the second or third time, I just quietly made a note on my phone, which is what I normally do in conversations where it's like, sure, and I write a note, and then I'll Google it afterwards. So I kind of thought it was maybe something political.
Well, like Geneva Convention, right? Yeah.
It was developed in Geneva, but it's basically a trellis system. It's a system that you use to train the vines in a specific shape. So in this case, they're trained to grow 2 branches in opposite direction. So it's like a T shape.
I've seen that.
Yeah, like two curtains.
So now I can be obnoxious and goes like, that is a Geneva curtain.
No, even worse, you should say, oh, what a lovely Geneva curtain you've got there.
So next vineyard, right?
Absolutely.
We're on it.
But this is another way that we can grow grapes in cooler climates because it maximizes sun exposure, it improves the fruit quality and the yield, and it reduces how much canopy. So canopy is a really wine wankery term for foliage and leaves.
But you do that with, because I've been growing tomatoes. I'm sorry. I try to in my garden before the blight gets to them. But
I say tomato.
when you grow tomatoes, and this is something I've failed the first year I was growing them, and then had a friend say, "Oh, did you do this?" But yeah, you're supposed to get rid of a lot of the non-fruit bearing leaves. And that's partly for the nutrients to go to the fruit, but then also partly just to make sure that the sun's hitting the fruit instead of the fruit being shaded by all these cumbersome leaves. So is it similar?
It's exactly that.
Oh, amazing.
Because
Okay.
if all the nutrients and all the good stuff is going to the leaves, then there's not enough going to the grapes. So you want to cut that back. I mean, in really, really warm climates, they actually need a bit of foliage because it protects the grapes from sunlight. So when it's baking hot, you can burn these grapes. So you need a certain amount of leaf to keep
That's not a Welsh problem.
we like a leaf.
We like a leaf.
You need to
A
keep-
modesty leaf.
protect the fruit, but in cooler climates it's better not to have it as much. That's something that I've learned thanks to Colin.
Listeners can't see the gestures you're doing with your modesty leaf right now.
What if the grapes are shy?
I'm not sitting opposite Angela next time.
It's like what they did to the statue of David when they worried about that stuff for a while.
Sure.
I've also
You
got
look-
a
Sorry.
really good statistic for you.
Okay.
Thanks to Colin. He was saying that in the last century there have only been like 11 days where the temperature has been recorded as 20 degrees in winter. Like proper, like a freak hot day. And out of those 11, 9 of those days were in Llandudno, where Conwy Vineyard is based. Now, this is also why one of the very first purpose-built holiday resorts was built in Llandudno, because a guy called Owen Williams, I think his name was looking at weather records, looking for the mildest year, and Llandudno apparently has the warmest winters. So the resort could actually be open all year round, which I just thought that was like mind-boggling. And I don't know if this is why, but Steve told me this because he writes a pub quiz, so he's full of random facts. But he said that the very first Pontins holiday camp was also built in Prestatyn.
Yeah.
So it's not in Llandudno area, but I wonder if the
Same idea.
Yeah, maybe there's something to it.
Caravan site. Yeah.
Near the sea,
vineyard,
but
I
there's
see.
not-
The whole point is that they've got quite mild winters. So even though
Which is not what you'd expect.
no,
That's really interesting.
but if you don't have huge shifts in temperatures, then that can be really good for the vineyard. So yeah.
Okay, so one of the things we said we would do was shine a spotlight on some of our fantastic vineyards. We said we would talk about some of the characters involved and why they're there, what they do, how they do it. So you went to see Colin, you said, in Conwy.
Yeah, I've mentioned Colin so many times
Colin's
already.
your new best friend.
It was really nice. We drove to Conwy at like 10:30, 11, and we didn't leave until early afternoon. I think we were there for about 2 hours because Colin took us around the vineyard. I've been there before, but he's a very chatty, kind of charismatic man, and you want to stay, you want to learn more. It's just so great. So Colin and Charlotte, they planted in 2012, and they had absolutely no background in vine growing, which is really, really common in the Welsh wine industry. As we kind of meet more vineyard owners and explore more different vineyards, we'll see that most people will be like, oh, and so I left my job as a whatever it is, and I
Yeah.
decided to plant a vineyard. So they started by planting hybrid varieties, as we've already covered, which obviously is kind of the safest bet. But realising how great the weather was on their site, they've actually planted Chardonnay and Pinot Noir as well, which of course is what we're going to be drinking. So they do lots of tours and tastings. And I think the great thing about their vineyard is, like Colin said, the tour itself is less about the vineyard and more about just the community that surrounds the vineyard and the wines that they make. So even though they've produced award-winning wines, and I can vouch for that, like the white Solaris and the red Rondo are kind of, for me, benchmark quality markers. And if people are a bit unsure in the shop and they want to try it, they really want to try it, but I know that, am I going to spend more than £20 on a bottle? What if I don't like it? I always get them to go for one of the Solaris or the Rondo because it's just a really good benchmark. So yeah, Charlotte cooks a lot. She, they do evening dinners and kind of pairings, and everything is related to food. Like Colin was saying, we don't just say this is an amazing Solaris. This is a Solaris that goes really well with Menai mussels, for example, or this Rhondda goes really well with Welsh lamb. And I really like how they incorporate the entire community. So he mentions that they work with the local community a lot, and he's like his words, whether it's a fisherman doing Menai oysters called Sean, or Tom, who does Conwy mussels. He's got a story about everyone. And he was even telling me about how difficult it is to actually pull up the mussels from the bottom of the seabed, and that it is a real workout. And we thought it would be a really good idea to start an S4C program of Welsh rugby players doing these, just dredging up
mussels on mussels.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Or mussels for mussels.
So
I'd watch it.
He's a real... Yeah, he's a real community-oriented bloke, which I think is really nice. And they do different practices in the vineyard itself as well. So they've actually got sheep's wool planted in the vines, kind of.
What?
Yeah,
Is it like along the ground, or actually?
Yeah, no, in the ground.
Oh,
Wine
wow.
jumper.
Yeah. So what they've done is basically they've planted wool in with the vines kind of in the ground, and it acts as like a natural weed deterrent, I guess. So there's lanolin in the fleece in the actual sheep's wool that deters slugs and snails. Grass can't go through it, so it stops all of that kind of vegetation on the ground, which can be really problematic, but also water can obviously go through that. In addition to that, it reflects sunlight, so you've got that little bit of extra warmth. And actually, Colin mentioned that they had 2 rows. One of them had sheep's wool planted in the ground, and the other one didn't. And I mean, he goes into the technical sugar levels, which is above my head, but it translates as 1 degree of alcohol higher, effectively, in the row that had sheep's wool versus the one that didn't.
Wow.
Now, this again is, giving back to the community, because you're buying wool that, I mean, wool isn't that valuable anymore, but it does cost the farmers more than £1 each sheep to shear them, which is obviously necessary to do.
If you ever wanted to make wine more Welsh.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love that. Like, not only is it's clearly a natural way to help the vines grow and produce the best grapes that they can, it's also like so Welsh. Like, imagine what we're using to help the vines thrive.
Yeah. I mean, and it biodegrades into the soil afterwards. And I think after a couple of years, it becomes not redundant, but you'd have to kind of replant. And he did mention that it's a bit of a task, because it's quite a smelly job as well. Downsides.
So Colin gave you a bit of a insight. You spoke to him about it, and he gave you a bit of a rundown of why he does it and why he loves it so much, didn't he?
He, funnily enough, I can't remember where the wine was from, but he basically tried a Bacchus wine, which was a wine made for a supermarket from grapes grown on Parva Farm Vineyard. And he tasted it and was like, wow, if we can make anything even remotely close to the quality of this wine, then I'm going to be happy. And I think they still have this really fun kind of slightly competitive relationship.
That's Judith.
Yeah, that's Judith, isn't it? Judith that we talked about in the first episode. So it's really nice to see that they still have a relationship. Obviously, they're both part of the Welsh Vineyard Association. But he would have told Judith this, and apparently she says, "Oh, have you made something that's similar in quality yet?" and I think he responds, "Well, not quite, but still trying." So that was a nice thing as well, hearing people within the Welsh Vineyard Association and within the industry speak very highly of each other and kind of champion each other. He mentioned a couple of other vineyards that I definitely have to visit. I sell some of their wines, or I've tried their wines before, but they're definitely on my list of places to visit. Also, just because I thought it was quite entertaining, I asked him what his least favourite thing about running a vineyard was, and he just responded, "Wind is my nemesis." I just thought, brilliant. And I totally understand, because the issue, I guess the main issue with northern parts of Wales, you've got altitude, you need that sunshine, you're sheltered from rain, you need the water on whatever sides, but the higher up you are, the more you are going to be dealing with winds that can absolutely just destroy your vineyard. But he said something really, really profound, and I'd rather you just hear it straight from him.
That's Cairn Llewellyn there. So it's a kind of thigh range. You'll often have snow on that. And as the sun comes up, it lights that up bright pink. And then if the tide's in and you're at the top of the vineyard, it's like a river of sunlight hitting the mountains. And you've got these birds of prey flying above you, and you're looking at your vines and you go, I don't need to be in France or Italy or Spain. I just want to be here because it's as good as anywhere. So for every day where the wind blows and you get fed up, there's 10 great ones, you know. So yeah, that's welcome to North Wales Vineyard.
I think, again, one of the things we wanted to achieve with this podcast is basically putting ourselves in the position of people who have been mad enough to go off, give up their day job, give up whatever they do, and start a vineyard, which, you know, in Wales, which is quite a mad idea, and Colin clearly loves it.
Yeah. And like I say, you can visit, so you can go on tours, wine tastings. It's more than that. They tend to have a lot of food involved as well. Charlotte is an absolutely amazing cook. You know, they were talking about firing up the barbecue or the grill and putting on fillet steaks. And honestly, the food they do there is amazing. And because of the climate they have, because of the weather, they're open all year round. It's one of the only vineyards in Wales, if potentially even the only one that I know of, apart from Llanerch, that is open from January to December. All right, so do you want to know the answer to the trivia question?
Ooh, yes, please.
Right, so I asked you, how many registered vineyards are there in North Wales at the moment? Angie, you said 15, and Jamie, you said 5. Do you know what? Split the diff. The answer is currently 10.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Right,
Are we
so
playing the prices right? Because it's so Jamie won, but if we're not...
That means
Then
you both lose.
I mean, it means, yeah, we both lose, and it also means we still haven't got a single trivia question right, either of us. I think
Long
it's
may
fair.
that last. But we're here to learn,
We are.
so that's okay.
Exactly. We've got lots of time. And I just want to point out as well that these are registered vineyards. There could be vineyards, there could be people growing grapes and making wines in their bathtub that haven't told the government. So there could be even more. Yeah.
Ooh, bathtub.
Lovely bathtub wine.
And that's something that I definitely think we should return to, is kind of clandestine vineyards or garage wine or...
Excellent idea,
Garage
Jamie.
wine.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
give it an
It's
edge.
almost as if you told me we should do that, isn't it?
Indie wine.
But I agreed. I thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely
yeah.
set aside an episode for that. I think it'd be really fun.
And in the meantime, I'll plant a vine in my garden and get a bath.
And we can we can interview you then.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got 10 vineyards in North Wales. So they're kind of dotted around, different sizes. They grow different grapes. I just thought it would be interesting to briefly mention them and just say a little bit about each one, because just because the Conwy vineyard is flourishing and doing really well doesn't necessarily, people would assume, well, what if that's the only one? What if, that's the exception to the rule? No, my friend. There are 10 other vineyards, functioning vineyards. So we've got Gwynllan Conwy in Anglesey. That is run by Ellen and Gavin. And I'm pretty sure they didn't have a background in grape growing either. But they've got Rondo, Regent, Solaris and Sauvignon Blanc, the hybrid varieties that we mentioned before. Their Solaris actually won bronze at the Wine GB Awards, which is a really good credential to have.
Oh, wow.
They've not been going too long. We've got Red Dwarf Bay Vineyard, again in Anglesey. Now, this is run by Kevin, and I tried to set up a meeting with Kevin, but he's in Spain at the moment because he works in Andalusia quite a lot. So his vineyard, he also sells Spanish ceramics. So
Wow.
Yeah. So he brings loads of stuff back because he tried to plant in the south of Spain, but because of bureaucracy, and I lived in Spain for 5 years, so I fully understand that paperwork they just love paperwork. They really do. And if you don't tick one box right, then they can just stop everything. So he brought back, he replanted in Anglesey, and his background is in IT.
Well, that qualifies you to sell ceramics and
Kevin
grow
from
wine.
IT and his vineyard.
So I think from what I can tell, his tours will basically explain to you how he really messed up at the beginning and how he planted the wrong things in the wrong place. I think he planted it on a northwestern slope. Like south, we need south-facing slopes. You need that sunshine. But yeah, I think he really leans into the fact that he didn't really know what he was doing at the time, which sounds really fun. So he does wine tastings and tapas, which is great. Yeah, so we'll definitely go and visit Kevin. There's Gwinllan Conwy in Conwy. There's Plas Dinas, which is like a 5-star luxury accommodation and restaurant.
Let's go there as well then.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're paying.
Yeah, I was. What do you mean I'm paying?
If you would like to sponsor this podcast,
Or Plas Dinas, if you'd like to invite us to your vineyard. So of course we go on to Vale Vineyard Gwynllan Dyffryn. This is owned by Gwen and Rhys. They actually grew up on farms and studied agricultural college. So there's not many people. I mean, Judith, obviously.
I was going to say Judith from Parva. That's her background.
Yeah, I think it's horticulture is her background.
Okay,
and
but
then
same sort of ballpark.
Yeah, and then her husband Colin as well, agriculture. So
Did they go to Plumpton?
everyone went to Plumpton.
Everyone went to Plumpton.
Part of the Welsh Vineyard Association scheme is they all went to Plumpton and did kind of courses.
Oh, fab.
It's
Plumpton alumni.
Plumpton. I wonder if they've got like
Say that after
a hoodie. You know when you study together and you always get a hoodie and you've got like everyone's names or
Plumpton 2001 on the back.
Yeah, just with all the vintages, like the most recent vintages that have done well. So yeah, they've planted Pinot Noir, Cabernet Noir, Sauvignon Blanc. Again, these wines are award winning, and I think it was one of their wines that won. I think it was best white. They definitely won an award in the Welsh Wine Awards last year. There's a vineyard called Gwernaffield. There's Pant D. There's one called Le Prévost.
Oh,
he's literally
not Welsh.
only on Instagram. So I feel like you actually would have to drive up and like knock on the gates to find out more. And then there's two more. So there's Llwyn Hydol, which means magical grove, near Pwllheli, and they've got Rondo and Seival. Apparently, the first new potatoes in the area grew there.
Nice.
So we can.
I love a new potato.
Yeah, we can do a wine tasting and eat some jack potatoes, maybe.
No, new potatoes.
Oh, new potatoes,
yeah.
Potato salad.
Hey, nice, yeah.
Or new potatoes that you've crushed, fried in a little bit of butter, and then you can put any sort of seafood with capers on top of that.
Oh,
should we do a recipe segment?
100%. I think we
Yeah,
should.
what would pair well with this wine?
Yeah, contact us or comment on Instagram if you'd like to see a recipe section. Yeah,
we could get a chef on.
Yeah, I do. I think new potatoes are underrated potato.
Yeah.
That's a controversial view, I know, but
No, I'm with you on
I'm
that.
with you,
They
yeah.
say
Totally
they're perfect
agree.
with any. They just like their little sponge. I'm
We're
so
all
hungry.
getting really hungry.
I just want caper butter now.
Right, so the last one on the list here is Mawddach Vineyard. So I know it's not really giving you like loads of information about them all, but it does show that dotted around all of the north of our lovely, beautiful country is a different vineyards growing different grapes.
Okay, so all of the vineyards we've been talking about here, they're all, well, like all of the Welsh vineyards that are in operation, they're all modern. I'm a historian of way, way back. So I study mainly 18th century history. So trying to find a connection between these specific sites and the historical record, at least that I look at, it's going to be a bit of a stretch here. So I don't have any stories that have to do with any of the sites that these vineyards are on, but I do have a story about some contraband wine in North Wales.
I'm in.
Fab. Because I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, I am a historian of crime and deviance. So if I've got nothing else to contribute, it will be crime and deviance. Histories of crime and deviance. I'm not...
it's very niche, isn't it?
It is. Not current.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I have a story from Northeast Wales in 1782. And so in February of that year, there was a sloop, which is a type of sailing ship, not a huge one. But
it's a Beach Boys song, Sloop John B. Oh,
I did not know that.
Is it about a boat?
It's about a boat.
Is it?
Yeah, listen to the words. It's like...
I never listened to words until...
Okay.
Can you recite any of the lyrics offhand? Just I don't know the
No,
song.
I can't. I'm not under pressure. No. I'll have
Okay,
to,
fair enough.
Yeah, future episode maybe
All right.
I'll sing the entire thing.
Noted. So there was a sloop called the Mary, and it wrecked in February of 1782. But it wrecked on West Hoyle Bank, which is actually in the River Dee. So it's basically England at that point, or so close to England, because this was a boat that was going from Liverpool to Whitehaven. So it wasn't going further afield, but it was going in and out of Liverpool. And so this all along the West Wales coast, it would have been a huge shipping route. It would not have been very quiet at all, because that's the main way into Liverpool, and Liverpool was one of the most important ports in Britain in the 18th century. Lots of trade, lots of other dark links that we won't go down that route, but there's a dark legacy there as well. Anyway, so the Mary, which was a sloop, it wrecked on West Hoyle Bank, which is in the River Dee. Loads and loads of ships wrecked there as well. There's some laws around shipwrecking back in the day that if you go out and you help rescue all of the cargo off of a wrecked ship, you're entitled to keep some of it. If you're a landowner and you own that stretch of coastline and the ship wrecked there, it's basically yours. But
Nice.
I know, right? That doesn't seem very landowner at all now, does it? So the crew of a couple of different ships went out and helped salvage with the intention of, helping to save what was there for the owners and then keeping what they thought was their fair share. Fast forward a month, and this guy named Edward Barnes has been alerted that there may be some contraband material stashed away in a farm nowhere near, well, not really very near where the shipwreck was. So it was
naughty.
I know, right? So it was this place called Don. Still there, you can still go to Don. It's not a heavy populated area. And there is a fulling mill at Don. There's the alarm raised that there's all of these goods that are found at the fulling mill at Don. And we know about this because two men, who were the men who were charged, Henry Owen and John James, we know this because they did what's called turning king's evidence. Any guesses what it means to turn king's evidence?
Grass on someone.
Grass on someone
Oh,
is
no
exactly
way.
right. Is
Wow.
exactly right.
Did you know that?
No, I was trying to be funny.
But they so they both grassed on each other,
Oh,
but
no.
then also said no, it was these other guys as well. So their hot take, which matched, their hot takes match each other, but they just basically blamed
the other one.
each other. But their stories matched enough that they may not be as implicated. So what they said happened is about 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, they got in their boat and they crossed over to West Hoyle Bank, and there were two other boats from another ship that was also out of Liverpool. And they said that they all went in and they got out as much stuff as they could because, of course, they were getting this out for the rightful owners, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the rightful owners. And so on the boat, they found a whole bunch of blue cloth, a whole bunch of soap, several casks of pigs of brass.
What's a pigs of brass?
So a pig is, it's basically like a measurement that's like a blob of brass. I don't know how
Like
big a pig.
hogsheads.
Like hogsheads.
Like
I
a
wasn't going to bring up hogshead.
like a hogshead
you
of
beat
brass.
me to it. Yeah.
Basically like a hogshead of brass, but
Sorry,
instead of the cask being called a hogshead, there's the cask, and then you have, it's basically like saying a bar of gold. There's clearly some sort of measurement there. So there's a whole bunch of brass. There's some pickle jars that they also take.
Love me a pickle.
And there were about 5 casks of raisin wine.
Ooh.
Lovely.
And I think we talked
Yeah.
briefly about raisin wine before, but can you remind us what raisin wine is?
Oh, it would have been dried grapes, effectively. So you turn the grapes into raisins, so that the content is really like almost syrupy, because it's
there's
just
not a lot of moisture in a grape.
no, like all the water's gone. So you're just left with the sugars and the flavors. Kind of think about like port style, sherry style wines, like sweeter, alcoholic. Yeah,
So
lovely.
do you happen to know where they would have made raisin, like where in the world they would have made raisin wine, or is it basically anywhere that
18th century. I mean, this would have been kind of more kind of Portugal, the warmer sites, think Madeira, that kind of thing, and then they would have been brought over down the Douro Valley. And
that makes sense. So this, I think, just shows the trade in wine and the sorts of things that are going in and out of a port like Liverpool. So it just shows how well connected.
Yeah.
Like we often think of global trade as a very, very modern thing now.
And do you know what? Actually, the Romans, when they were planting vineyards, one of the main points was not just to find the right site. One of the most important things for them was for it to be well connected. And that meant that it had to be close to a body of water that could be a port. And so actually it was more important for them to have a vineyard and be able to produce wines and then ship it out.
Export it out.
So yeah, it definitely makes that's really interesting.
So you see stories like this all along the North Wales coast, but then also all along the South Wales coast. So along like the Glamorgan coastline, because that's where the ships were going. Those are the major shipping routes. So there's lots of shipwrecks. So we can actually find just by the list of things that were pillaged from shipwrecks, because it is usually pillaging, because why not? There's a shipwreck.
It was just there.
It was just there. I was trying to get the stuff back to the rightful owners. Don't mind all of the stuff that I've stashed away at at the fulling mill at dawn.
So if a ferry now crashes at the Holyhead port and it's got loads of like expensive cars on board, I am
not legally qualified to advise on modern maritime law.
You were thinking about expensive cars, and I was like, how much wine would they have on a cruise ship?
I'm aiming higher than that. Come on.
Be fair. Anyway, back to the story. So the shipwrecks in February. A month later, somebody grasses on them, and this stash of stuff is discovered at the fulling mill. And we know that Henry and John were responsible for getting the stuff there, because it was actually their wives that brought it.
Of course, getting women to do the dirty work.
There's some sort of criminal network here, but we know that according to all of the mariners involved, the two that gave evidence and turned evidence against each other, they said that they only took a small amount of the cloth, a small amount of the soap, a couple of pickle jars. They only took what they thought was theirs and helped preserve the rest. But there are these two other boats there full of all of these other mariners, and they were from Liverpool, and they must have taken the rest. The rest that was found stashed away at the fulling mill at dawn. And so they searched the house and they found all of this other stuff. So far more than they said that they had actually just they're sort of what they're entitled to. This cloth, these pickle jars, everything. And there were these two other boats from Liverpool that were there, and they took everything else. But what they did, according to the lads who gave evidence, is there were 4 or 5 casks of wine, and they divvied that amongst themselves, and they just drank it there. 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning.
Like then and there, on the spot?
They distributed it amongst themselves and consumed the better part of it.
Wow.
Rather than get caught with it. Or...
This is what they said that they did. That they just drank it then and there, and then they divvied everything else up. And like raisin wine, like you've just said, it's probably not low alcohol. But I don't think that's what... I'm sure they drank some of it then, but I don't think that's what actually happened to it.
Oh, I get you. Yeah. I'm following now.
It ended up, or a fair bit of it ended up. So when Henry and John's wives brought the stuff to the fulling mill, one of the things they wanted the guy who ran the fulling mill to do was fix up the cloth, because the cloth had been in the sea. So they're like, well, we'll pay you to sort this cloth out so we can then sell it on. And this wine was found as well. And the wine was still in cask, but there was also wine found in pickle jars. So this is month-old wine that's been in seawater. So the casks have been in the sea, and then they've opened the casks, drank some of it, and then siphoned some of it off and put it in pickle jars, and then stashed it inland.
They've had a hell of a couple of months, haven't they?
And they
thought, of pickles, loads of wine.
Right? And so these two lads turn evidence against each other and grass on the guys from the other boats, which may or may not have even existed.
Sorry, ma'am. It was the other boy down the road.
Yeah, exactly. So they turn evidence against each other. They're both indicted for plundering a shipwreck, and as well as for larceny, which is for stealing the stuff. And they're found not guilty of plundering the shipwreck, and only one of them is found guilty of larceny.
So they were hanged.
No. And actually, not a lot of people were hanged in Wales.
Well, that's good to hear.
Love that.
But yeah, there's a tangentially related story about wine from North Wales.
Well,
in 1782.
Enjoyed that. And more of them to come in future episodes. So this is the Gwinllan Conwy Pinot Noir Rosé. And it's really good.
It is. So there's a little bit of Regent in this as well. It's not just Pinot Noir. And I think that adds to the colour because Region is a really dark-skinned grape variety. So
it is quite dark for a rosé.
Yeah, right. It kind of reminds me of like a Spanish Tempranillo rosé.
It's quite like a full-bodied rosé, if that makes sense.
No,
I'm
it
going to
is.
be honest, I'm not a lover of rosé normally.
Are you not?
No, I like the dry stuff, the sort of Provence
Same.
French stuff.
Like if someone showed me a bottle of this and said, "Would you like it?" To me, it looks
like a sweet one.
exactly, and I would be put off by it. But it's not that
not
at all.
at all.
It's really really
Yeah.
nice.
Do you know what? That is one of the main issues. Not the main issue. I have lots of issues. But a common thing that happens in the shop is to do with the colour of rosé, and it drives me up the wall.
I bet.
And it's just that. It's that if you look at the colour, if it's darker, if it's not like really pale like a Provence, people assume that it's going to be on the sweeter side.
Yeah.
And that's just because the Mateus of the Portuguese rosés, which were kind of really sweet and
I can picture the bottle,
quite punchy.
that sort of round bottle.
Everyone associates that colour with sweetness. And now, I mean, like this, it's darker because it happens to have a darker skin grape variety in the blend. It has nothing to do with sweetness. So if anyone is listening and assumes that a dark coloured rosé is a sweet rosé, it's not.
I heard someone
95% of rosés now are like dry.
I heard someone in a bar actually asking what the colour of the rosé was.
I've asked that before.
Have you?
I have.
It was
I am
Angela,
that
then.
person. I am that person that
Sorry.
drives Sara nuts. Because for me, it's not the Portuguese ones, but like growing up in North America, it was always a white Zinfandel.
Yeah.
And Zinfandel's, I think, Primitivo. It's the similar.
That's right.
But grown in California, and so that was a white Zinfandel was like the trainee wine.
Yeah.
So it was really, really sweet. And it's what you drank on your first date when you're like 19 or something like that.
Yeah, but it does give you a bit of a headache.
Yeah.
So just want
And
to
diabetes.
so just want to squash that. But yeah, so the color is really interesting. It's got that nice little dark tinge to it. What fruit are you getting on the nose? Do you want to? Yeah, go on. Test,
I'm useless at this bit.
Are you?
Yeah.
This sounds weird, and I don't want this to sound off-putting at all, but it's kind of like beefy to me. I'm not getting fruit, but I mean in a good way. Like it's hearty. Like I know you don't want your wine to be beefy, but it's got a full-bodied meatiness to it in a good way.
Yeah. So I'm going to translate that as ripe fruit.
Okay,
Like
we'll go with that
on the riper side.
That sounds nice.
So you can smell the intensity of the fruit, maybe. Instead
we'll go with that.
Instead
But
of
I
like
don't
meat
smell-
flavored.
But I don't. I think it's I think it's because it's like the ripeness and the intensity of the fruit, but it's not. Because when you think of like ripe fruit, you think of like sometimes like excessive sweetness or almost like ethylene because it's or ethanol or whatever because it's like when they start to go off, they get a bit alcoholic. That's literally what we're drinking. It's not that. It's not that sickly sweet ripe fruit, but there's a fullness to it.
Absolutely. It's definitely got texture. It's almost got a creamy texture.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's almost like sour cherry, like a raspberry, but it's got this Turkish delight.
Sour cherry, that's it. I get that.
something.
As soon as you said that, that's
Yeah.
exactly what I'm tasting.
Yeah.
Are you getting it now?
Yeah,
This is why she's trained and we're not.
exactly.
But it's
So it doesn't taste
it's-
like beef.
It doesn't,
like
definitely.
There's definitely no meat in this.
No.
But it's tart and honeyed at the same time. I think that's what I really like about it.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, like you say, it does have a really nice creamy texture, good mouthfeel.
Oh, never say that again.
Of all the ones we've drunk, that is my favourite so far.
It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah. Colin, tribute to you on that one.
Colin and Charlotte, thank you so much.
So that was a nice little tour of North Wales that we've done there. Honestly, I mean, when I think of Wales, I don't necessarily think about wine until this podcast, but I definitely don't associate wine with North Wales, but apparently I'm wrong.
Yeah, you will now.
I will.
Yeah, it's quite surprising. I mean, the first shock was 50 vineyards in Wales. The second shock is really good wine from the north, which is, as we associate with cold, wet, etc., but no, turns out they can knock out a good
They can
wine.
make a mean wine.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm really glad that you enjoy the wine as well. Pinot Noir Rosé.
Yeah.
More to come.
Delish.
Yeah. Oh, yes, please. I would like you to listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yes, please.
And if you don't already, which you hopefully do, follow us on Instagram at Uncorked Welsh Wine. Iechyd da.
Iechyd da.
Da.